Actually, we have 8 members, so technically that's quorum. 13, 14, 15, yeah. Eli, you're good to start.
Yeah, we're good to start.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just a second to pull this up.
Okay.
It's an important letter. I just had it on. Just 1 second. I think okay. Okay. Again, beautiful day to be out. Thank you guys, all of you whose faces I can't see, and those faces whose beautiful faces I can see through their pictures. Thank you for being here. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. It's 6:41. And before we do that, we're gonna go through the formality of putting a motion for the approval of tonight's meetings. Putting a motion on the floor.
I would just like to add the inclusion resolution again to the agenda to see what item can be advanced from there.
I thought that was a standing item on our agenda.
It's not on, it's never on the
Oh.
agenda, so I don't know why, but I thought all of the
Probably because it gets cut and paste from the prior month. Would it be
Oh.
possible, Ebenezer, if you could, in addition to adding it to this evening's agenda, Eleazar, if
Sure.
Ebenezer, you could physically add it to the document, like right now, so that next month, when you copy and paste this month's agenda for next month's agenda, it's actually there and you don't have to remember to add it back in.
Understood. Point taken. So I still haven't gotten any approvals or ayes.
Second,
Second. Okay. All right. Motion passes. We're gonna add the inclusion resolution as part of our agenda. On my report, I'm gonna briefly read a letter or an email that was sent out to all the community board chairs and district managers in reference to candidate appearances on CB meetings. This letter came from Adele Bartlett, our counsel at MVP at the Manhattan Borough President's Office, and I'm going to start reading. I'm going to then distribute it to you all. It says, good afternoon. As we get closer to the primary elections, our staff has reported several incidents where people running for office have appeared virtually at community board meetings with either physical posters or virtual background announcing promoting their candidacy. You all received materials explaining that absolutely no city resources can be used to promote any candidacy. Permitting the use of the board's Zoom during this meeting should be avoided to comply with this rule. If at any future board meetings, candidates make such appearance accompanied by campaign material, please politely request that the material be removed. We recommend that you make an announcement that this rule will be in effect at the beginning of meetings. Thanks, and don't hesitate to contact me if you have any additional questions at Adele Bartlett. So I think it is very clear. The language is very strong. It's very direct as to how we are at our community, at subcommittee level, should conduct our meetings. I think that I've personally seen maybe just once situation in which a poster had been shown as a way of promoting a candidate, which is democratic, but it's improper and it's unethical. So I think, having said that, I think that we're gonna carry on, and I think we're gonna do what we're supposed to do. Okay. As part of my report, I also like to take a moment, not necessarily of silence, but of reflection to all this anti-Asian violence in our city, the deaths in Indiana, the death in South Carolina, the grandmother in Brooklyn that mentioned that the city now has become a killed or be killed, and all the violence that's happening. Someone just got killed in a brand new truck that he leased to his mother in Brooklyn, well, those are unintended consequences of language and the way that we approach one another. In our last presidency is a manifestation of what can happen when language is used in an improper way, and people stop talking to one another, but just offending one another and calling each other names and all that kind of stuff. There's people older than me, obviously, on the board that I would like to hear and have them in their report include and the specific way in which we can improve, at least in how we talk to one another in certain situations. And that's pretty much what I wanted to include in my report. Ebenezer, you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be back to work. My report is very brief. Return to office. At the last general meeting, I mentioned that we were discussing with the Manhattan Board of President's office the return to office for May 15, something like that. And we were waiting for the guideline from the Manhattan Board of President's office to use as a model to create a guideline for community board to have tailored to our need. This afternoon, we received the Board of President guidelines list, and we're gonna continue working with drafting our guideline to tailor our needs in the office. We have preliminary conversations with Columbia University, Eleazar and myself, we have been talking with the staff, et cetera, et cetera. Talking about the staff, Paola Garcia gonna be out of the office from today until May 10, May 12, something like that. She has to take care of herself. She is on the care, doctor care with a minor surgery that are gonna be happening, and she will be out of the office. And finally, we report to the Parks Department the falling tree on PS 48 a few weeks ago, asking to Parks Department to help us in this matter. Parks Department respond to us that it was not in their jurisdiction, and we reached directly to the superintendent of the District 6, asking for her to take action. He responded back saying that he gonna contact the principal of the school, and the principal of the school responds saying that he has taken action requesting the Department of Education to remove that building. It's a little complex situation because these trees, they are outside the school in private property, and those branches are falling to the school backyard. So we're working on that matter, following up until it gets resolved. This is the end of my report. Is there a question? List reader, OC, Liz first.
I have a general comment to Eleazar from before, and that was just to everybody to also hold a thought for justice in Minneapolis, where that jury just got their instructions. So I'm holding my breath, and just in the context of what you had said, there's all of that as well. Ebenezer, do we have budget to like buy Paola some flowers or some expression of something? She's staff. Is that is there budget for that?
Yes, yes, but this taking outside the country, and we can, wait for her return to do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, she works hard, and I think it would be good if we could, share some token of our good wishes to her. And my other question relates to DCLA and the Open Streets Initiative. Has DCLA or the mayor's office or SAPO or anybody reached out to you as district manager in any way to indicate what their guidelines are for getting community feedback when somebody submits an application for a permit under that program? I mean, I know there are a whole lot of guidelines that, you can't have amplified sound, you can't have noise, and it can't be too high, and it can't be too big, and it can't be too many people. And so many of the things that folks might object to are sort of already baked in to the permitting application, but there's also something that leaves room for community board approval, but they didn't make any kind of process clear about what that engagement was. I was wondering if they had reached out to you. And if not, can you contact them and find out?
Yes, last month at the Borough Service Cabinet meeting, we have a very long meeting that to several hours, more than usual. And we had a very long presentation with a lot of changes that really we do not get quite the rules. It seemed to be changed, this cultural thing that anyone can apply practically, the plazas, the show, et cetera. And they said that we're going to follow up. And I just saw this morning an email that the person who made a presentation said that he's going to be available. I need to follow up. It's new to me. It's not the same like we had before. Last week when I was out on vacation, I got a phone call from several community residents and organizations asking, how the thing going to happen. So I need to educate myself. I received a complaint from Bennett Avenue. So we're going to be looking into that to see what it is and the new regulation and inform everyone. To be honest with you, it looks like we don't have that much to say in many things like we used to. The street activities like we used to be before, I think we still haven't, but I don't know if they're going to apply the social distance or et cetera.
They do have a clear requirement for social distancing, for masking. You have to submit all of that. But they suggested that there was some level of engagement with community boards, and I just wasn't clear what that is. So I felt like it was kind of overstepping my bounds if I reached out to them directly, because you are the district manager. So if you could do that and then let me know so I can get back to the cultural organizations who asked that of me at our committee meeting last week, would be excellent.
I need to call then. And I will do that this week.
Thank you so much.
Only thing I know for sure, just to put in my 2 cents, is that they're not allowing stages.
Right. There's there's a whole bunch of the things that people were really concerned about are explicitly prohibited. I had to read all the guidelines, but it's no stages. Whatever you're building can't be permanent. It can't be more than 10 feet. The crowd can't be more than, 250 people. There has to be a social distancing plan. Everybody has to wear masks. They can't have amplified sound, all of those things.
Yeah, right.
But there is the question of rerouting traffic, particularly in the case of Bennett Avenue. So
yeah. The definite thing is that there's nothing definite yet, and Ebenezer follow and speak to Liz directly so she can follow.
I appreciate it.
When the people are
yes,
asking.
I will do so.
Appreciate that. Ozzy?
Yes, I do have 2 questions, and it's more like I'm looking for updates. One is in regards to the gender neutral bathrooms that was decided on, as Richard said, last meeting about 3 or 4 years ago. And I would like to get an update on that. When is it going to be back to, when is the signs for men, women signs on the bathroom will be removed?
We're working with Columbia University on that request. Remember, Columbia is the one that manage our location. And when we were in the process of doing it, we got the COVID and the pandemic and the office is closed. So we will follow up. We're going to include that conversation when we talk to them about the reopening.
Because this was pre-COVID, this was like 3-4 years ago, and I clearly remember that after that the board decided that that's the way to go, a week or so later, boom, all of a sudden there were like signs for like, okay, the women bathroom and the men bathroom, and it was really odd. So I will keep asking about that. I know Richard will try to be on top of that, but I will be asking. Continue, as every month until we get to a resolution. My other question is in regards to the licensing committee documents. You probably saw I sent like 2 emails about that. I did not receive the pre-meeting documents, and I'm assuming nobody else on the board did. So this is something that I asked about, I want to say 6-8 months ago, and it was sent once to the entire board and never again. So I wanted to understand, why is it not being sent on a regular basis when the documents are being emailed to the entire committee?
Well, I believe it was overlooked this month.
It wasn't sent for 4 or 5 months.
Yes. Well, and also I got the report that the information was gathered very late on that day as well.
So the committee didn't get any information to make a decision?
I did not say that. It was getting late. It was sent late by the applicants.
Maybe Isidro can, when it gets around to your turn, you can speak about the actual process. How can the process be improved? Instead of just going and asking, the questions directly to Ebenezer, I think I'd like to have Isidro as well as part of the conversation, so that we can all come to.
That's okay, but the decision about sending was, there was a decision to send and to send from the office, and you
Okay.
yourself, Eli, said the entire board should get it, not only me. So
understand.
I'm saying we're not getting it, at least I'm not getting it.
I understand that, but this is about a process. So all parties involved should be part of the conversation instead of just having one A-B conversation. A, B, and C should be part of it so that we can come up with a way of facilitating that all information, as I requested a few months ago, gets delivered to the people that they need it to be. That's what I'm trying to follow here. All right.
Okay.
Isidro, so if you can,
again.
we will need you in your report, shine some light as to satisfy Ozzy's extremely important request. Thank you, Ozzy. Ozzy, you're next.
Oh, I'm next. Okay.
You have your
okay.
hand up. You have your hand up. So I figured.
I'm sorry. No. That was about the question to Ebenezer, and I got my questions. Also, now it's my report. Okay. So next month we spoke about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members that Eli, you were supposed to call, and so I'm wondering about the update. But before you give the update, I just want to say that I completed the entire, the attendance for the entire year of 2020 for all the members, and so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members that missed 7 meetings or more. And then we have 1, 2, no, and then 3 resigned. Okay, so I would like to know if there was any outcome from the phone calls that you made, and are we up to a point of sending letters to members?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
We are at a point in which letters should be sent. I
Okay.
did speak to some via phone and some I visited personally. and I had conversations with two of them. And in the third one, I resigned, which is Chris. That was part of that group of people that had a lot of.
So-
But yes, so the answer is yes. We are appointed that letter should be sent out.
All right, so can we, since it has to be in public, I think we should name names, who should get letters, because you tell me first, and then I'll ask you about the one that I still have on my list.
Okay, so you're asking me to
No,
tell
who
you
should-
who I spoke to?
Who should get a letter, yeah,
Every-
who was resigned?
well, Chris Ventura resigned. Christina Riccias is
Resigned.
quote unquote leave of absence. I'm not quite sure that she said I resigned.
The-
Who's the third person?
There was Juan Guzman,
Juan
and I
Guzman.
have Neisha that was resigned.
Naisha resigned. Yes, so those four people. You have 3 resignations and 1 quasi resignation.
Okay, my understanding from back
What is a
2 months
quasi
ago,
resignation?
Huh?
What is a quasi resignation? What do you mean by that?
She hasn't. She says she's out for medical reasons, so she hasn't actually resigned.
let me ask the question then, because according to the email that I received from Domingo 2 months ago, Christina Ricci's resigned. And my understanding, and I don't know if Natalie is on the call, that the office of the borough president did receive a letter from her. I'm not
No,
sure if Natalie is here to chime in, but let's leave her aside for a minute. We have Christopher Ventura, Juan Guzman, and Neisha Diaz that resign. Then we have Glennis, Ashley, Miriam James, Cindy Matos, and Jay Mazer and Aisha that I have more than 7 meetings that they missed. Of them, who did you speak to and who should get?
Yes, I just send them all letters. I spoke to Jay. I spoke to Cindy. I spoke to who's that third person you mentioned?
Ashley, Miriam James,
Miriam.
Glennis
spoke to
Aquino
Miriam.
Hill.
I spoke to 3 of them. So, but you can just don't send it to Miriam, Cindy, and Jay that I spoke to. All 3 of them.
So the names that you mentioned are the one to send letters to?
Send them all letters. Just make it all. Send them all letters, regardless of the conversations that I had with them, making them aware of their situation. That doesn't exceptionalize them from having to receive a letter, just like everyone else.
But if you had a conversation with them, maybe there is
Ozzy,
no,
the procedure is send them all letters, noting their absences. That's it.
okay. My last question is actually a question to Liz, and I don't know if she can hear me. There was a letter that you used to send members. Can I recycle that letter?
Of course, I'll send that to you.
I wasn't
Feel
sure
free
if
to-
you put it together. I don't want to plagiarize anyone's thing,
No,
so.
no, it's a standard letter that, we put together 4 board chairs ago.
Not a problem.
I will send that to you.
Okay, so just to conclude, Eli, Glennis, Ashley, Miriam, Cindy, Jay, and Aisha are getting letters.
All of them, yes.
Okay. Yes, Liz.
Yeah, I
Wait,
think,
wait,
No.
If
Point
it's a
order, point
question,
order.
I have 2 other people ahead of.
oh yeah, sorry.
Oh,
Oh, fine, no problem. I think it was Faye or Caesar. Who was first?
Fuego.
Faye? Yeah, Faye.
Yes, good evening, everyone. And thank you. Yes, I just want to clarify about Christina Ricci's. She went for surgery and she sent us a message stating, about her situation. She has now officially resigned. She's just waiting to recuperate from the surgery. So she will be back.
so okay, Okay, we have to clarify that directly with her.
If I could comment on that, because
I
it's a
can-
sort of parliamentary matter. Because we heard the term leave of absence and we don't actually have a leave of absence, but on the other hand, you are excused from meetings for up to 6 months because of recuperation, which is in effect a leave of absence. So basically, that is my understanding of what is happening in this situation.
Okay, I hope that shed some light into the issue here. Isidro.
Eli, can you shed some light as to the status on Domingos? I didn't hear that quite well. Did he resign? Is he on board?
No, Domingo is fine. What Ozzy said is that he has spoken to him. She has
No.
spoken to him, and he mentioned that Christina had resigned, but
It
that's
got
not the
an
case.
email. It wasn't a
Well, he got an email,
conversation.
but yeah, but that's not the case. Partly from what Faye just said, and I can testify to that. Thank you, Isidro. Who else was next? I think that was Liz, and then Tanya.
Yeah, no, I think it's wise, Ebenezer, to just send letters to everybody uniformly because there's then a consistent process. And Jim is absolutely right. It's not a leave of absence, it's excused. And it's the same thing like what happened with Omar. He knew he was having surgery. He said, I'm going to be gone for a couple of months. I'm not, there's no need for him to resign. And it's the same thing with Barbara. She's been in the hospital, she's recuperating. So we're obviously not going to see her for a little bit, but there's no need for her to resign. Same thing with Christina.
Did anyone other than you, Liz, received an email or a letter from Barbara that she is sick and will be out?
I did not receive a letter from her. I spoke with her, and from that, I know that she was in the hospital. She was in rehab. She was discharged. She went back for a procedure. She's back at home. I don't know what her status is in terms of returning, but she sounds much better, and her absences in March and April should be excused due to illness.
Okay.
Thank you Liz, for the clarification. Liz, Tanya.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, just for a process purposes, that perhaps it seems like there's just not enough communication going on, as particularly in the secretary's direction. I just think that maybe there should be some changes in process where, if someone is out, or if they're going to be out for extended time, or if there are resignations, or possible that instead of having conversations with individual people, which is fine for it to happen, but at first, that these people should, I think OC should be CC'd on all of that kind of correspondence, and so that there's awareness of what's going on, because it can get it sounds like it's just confusing. And so I just think we need to look at the process and how things are done, and to make it more seamless, where the people who need to be informed are informed and kept informed about the status of people. And perhaps the list of people who are informed of this probably could be expanded. And maybe that's something to look at in terms of when these situations occur, who is informed, who is CC, who is informed, because I think it's important that board leadership, it knows what's going on with with the other members of the board. So I don't know how that's happening now. It just seems like some people are talking to some people and getting information, but it's not filtering to the people that it needs to filter to. And so it's just very confusing. I think that we need to know what's happening with people. And there needs to be a process put in place where certain people are CC'd on these things, or if people are unable because they're too sick, or something happens where they're unable to craft such an email themselves, that the chair or the district manager, someone crafts this email and CCs to correct the people who need to know this information right away.
Thank you. Points taken.
But will we change the process? Because a lot of times when we we put these things out there, but we don't really change our process. So I guess what I'm asking is Is this something that we could just consider now in terms of making the change and put in making that thing happen? Because then nothing ever happens. We just keep doing the same thing we always do. So is there, a way to put this on the table to say, hey, is there right now while we're here to see if that's something that a change that we will agree to make?
All right, so Paola gets back. We're gonna have a meeting with our secretary, and then we're gonna refine it, retune it, reshape it. Because I know Liz had an extremely wonderful process. We just need to take on and retake on some of those things.
I just want to say, we have a process.
Yes.
The process is what the process is, and the problem isn't that we don't have a process. The problem is that we don't follow the process that we have. So I would like to strongly agree with Tanya that, we have a process.
What is the process?
The process is that people are supposed to notify in writing their committee chair, the board chair, and the secretary if they're going to be missing a meeting, and state the reason why they're missing a meeting so it can be determined if it's excused or unexcused. That reasons of sickness, when you're sick, that might not be the first thing on your mind if you're like having surgery. Oh yeah, I got to notify the board. So that as soon as it's practicable, you should let the board know that that's why your absence should be excused, that you're sick. And that, that if anybody who receives those communications sees that the other people who should receive them weren't copied, that they then loop those folks in. So I think what's kind of breaking down is, particularly for newer members who may be less familiar with the process, they maybe just need a reminder. Wouldn't be terrible if either LESR or OC maybe made a quick announcement at the next meeting or sent a quick email to the whole board reminding people this is the process.
Right.
But we have a process. It's just that it's not always followed.
Thank you, Liz. Wayne?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what Liz said. I mean, we have a process, and there's nothing that the executive committee or the board needs to do other than to remind every board member what the process is, and it's actually their responsibility to follow. Because if they inform, in some cases, I will get an email that someone's not going to be in, and I will take it upon myself to make sure the office is looped in and others, but really it's the person who's sending only me that email that should make sure they send it to me and to the office and to the secretary.
Thanks, Wayne. Thank you. Okay, so before we move on to the review of our calendars, does anyone else have any other constructive and positive comments, such as the ones that I've heard thus far?
Liz, is that a new hand?
That's the old hand.
My bad, old hand.
Okay, thanks. Now we're gonna please, folks, review May's calendar. If there's any changes that you guys would like to make, anything that I'm sharing the screen.
Funny. Could you move it in a little closer? I can't read that.
Okay. Debbie, I see you scratching your eyes because you can't see them, right? Unmute yourself.
Can't hear you, Debbie.
Okay. You gotta unmute yourself, Deb.
I was just going to say, I can just launch it from my email. I do love the low-tech solution, though, because I'm a little bit that way.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a dinosaur time. So we're good with May. You gotta give this.
Oh my God, so cute.
June 2021. Here we go, Debbie. Anybody, any changes? Isidro, Liz, you guys are usually Faye.
My only concern with June is, and I'm not really sure what we do about it. I predict a high absence rate. I think that, and it may be too late for this year, but I think that going forward, now that the primary has been moved from, the second Tuesday in September to the fourth Tuesday in June, for people who are employed in that business, we're going to have a bunch of people who are missing the last community board meeting, and it happened last year and it happened the year before. And so maybe we need to think about not having our June meeting coincide with the primary. Just a thought.
Richard, you gotta unmute yourself. I'm trying to make a comment. Don't mute yourself, Richard. There you go.
I'm doing it. No, just wanted to add a word of support to that. This is a group of activists, and the people who attend community board meetings are a group of activists, not necessarily deeply involved in the electoral process, but somehow or other. Election day is a holiday in the same way as the other holidays we observe, but it is a meaningful day in terms of who is part of the community board.
Is Monday, June 21st a good suggestion, or does anyone have anything better in mind? So Liz.
As of right now, that's the executive committee day. So you got to make a couple changes.
Not Monday, June the 21st is. Monday, June 21st is blank.
We moved the executive committee back a week so as not to have it be in sequence. So yeah, I would say I would support moving it to Monday.
It's either that or June has 5 Tuesdays. That's the other possibility.
Well, if it's a 5 Tuesday month, then sure, but this ain't that.
No, June 29th is a Tuesday.
Right.
Oh, then yes, can we move it to June 29th?
June 29th it is. Any opposed?
Okay.
Just keep in mind that the second you change the date, people have an automatic excuse not to be there. That doesn't mean they won't be there, but that's what the bylaws say.
Good
Right.
point.
It's a close
My
call.
job is to remind us of the rules from time to time.
Hey guys, I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I think Monday would be
June 21st.
I think they're both reasonable solutions. Maybe this is one of those things that calls for a vote.
I mean, if I may point out that for people who are missing, for people who feel like they are sufficiently engaged in the electoral process, that they will be busy on election day,
Yeah.
it strikes me as there's a high degree of likelihood that those individuals are probably going to be working their butts off starting Thursday and getting very little sleep until 9 p.m. on Tuesday. So Monday is likely not a great day for people who are employed in that sector.
Yeah.
I feel like
June is-
Tuesday, if we do it the 29th, that people are just going to be burnt out. We all know that that's kind of like the last thing we do for the summer. I just feel there's going to be a high rate of people not being there because they're just it's kind of like the last day of school. Are people really showing up to the last day of school? I don't know.
Yes.
I never did. I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to keep it honest. Last day of school, I graduate, I'm out. I got my grades. But again, it's been a long year. We've been through a lot. It's been a lot. So I don't know if people are going to show up. I'm going to show up, but I don't know if the whole board in unison is going to be there. So just something to consider. I'm good either way.
Richard?
Everyone's speaking reasonably. Why don't you just take a straw vote on the 21st, 22nd, and 29th?
Ozzy? Oh, Catherine, I see your hands is raised.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna kind of second what Francisco said, because I think folks tend to check out the later yet. Sorry, I'm around a lot of background noise. No, normally my camera's not off. But also I think on the 22nd, considering outside people who may be employed, is that, it's also a time, especially at 6:30, and when starting earlier, that people go to the polls. So, whether or not people are employed in it, but I think part of it is that it's the last meeting of the year. So whether it's people from the general audience or the general membership, if it is a prime time that people do go to the polls between 6 to 9, then, we want to make sure that we have some type of attendance. So I guess
Right.
any day works, but
All right,
I agree with a straw vote.
Jose, let's do a quick vote, 21st, 29th, starting with the 21st.
21st to 29?
Yes.
Well, wait, are we voting to say which one we prefer? 'Cause
Yes.
That would be, okay.
How about raising our hands?
Can we just can everybody just raise hands, use
On
the
the-
raise hand feature?
Those on the 21st, raise your hand.
Yeah, raise your hand for 21st.
Put your cameras on, guys.
Can you click on a raise hand because I
Okay.
can't see everyone on the screen? Thank you.
Got it.
But I don't have that.
Okay, so
Just raise it, then, Richard.
Richard, if you go to the participants.
I can't even
bottom,
see
it'll
Richard
see
right
raise
now.
hand.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members raised their hand for the 21st, including Richard. Are you?
No, I found the raise hand. Thank you, Liz.
Okay, so I have 5 members for the
Wait.
21st.
Oh, see, I came in late. I was slow on the draw, so make sure you count me.
You're in the 5.
Okay.
So we have 5 voted for the 21st. Now lower
Everyone
your
should
hand.
lower their hands.
You have to lower your hand. And now who is for the 29th? And for the 29th, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members for the 29th. So
Richard, you can't raise your hands twice. You can only vote
He
once.
didn't.
I know, I'm just kidding. I'm just giving him a hard time.
So
I'll take that as a very friendly comment.
So we have 6 for the 29th and 5 for the 21st. 29th win.
29th win. So it is the 29th, Ebenezer. Write it down, the 29th.
Okay, everyone, please lower your hands. Thank you.
Nice. A lot easier that way. So the 29th of June. July, I think we all going to be away. Away.
Hopefully.
Anything on July? Any comments?
Yeah, we sometimes have the
Committee of the whole.
And my suggestion is to have a tentative date now, just in case we need to use it, instead of going through all of this all over again in a month or 2.
Is it usually the 3rd Tuesday of the month?
When in doubt, let's use the 4th Tuesday. It's what people know.
Yeah, on the 20th. Just hold up.
Are we planning to have one committee meeting or 2? Because we could also have it, if there's only one, we could also have it in August and not in July.
Have we ever done the committee of the whole in August?
Yeah, and
Many
we have.
times.
Sometimes we usually do it in July, but we sometimes do it in August. The argument for doing it in July on the 4th Tuesday is it's the 4th Tuesday. The argument for doing it in August, unlike in the 1st or 2nd week, is then it's kind of equidistant between the last June meeting and the 1st September meeting.
Yeah, I would vote to leave us alone in August.
Okay, so the 27th, July 27th is the 4th Tuesday of July. So just mark that on the calendar as the committee of the whole meeting. Okay, great. Moving along, moving down the list, a special favor. Would you at least, as a special favor, let's talk a little about our meeting this morning?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I would love for you to do that if you can.
Sure. We received.
When it's time for your turn.
Oh, sorry. Well, since it's not a parks issue, but sure, absolutely.
All right. Mary?
Yes. 1 second. We had a presentation at our last meeting from Yolanda Rodriguez, the director of the Josephine Herrick Project, which is a project that works as a healing modality with photography classes and other kinds of venues to help. That started out by a healing modality with wounded warriors, but it's become a project that is working with seniors and with children and families of children who need this kind of work. And she was able to show us a video which talked a lot about the work that they do with photography, and really interesting, and looked like it was quite comprehensive, and trying to partner with some of the senior centers for the future. It's difficult to do it right away because of the difficulty getting seniors hooked up with Zoom or any other kind of media modality because of the problems we have. But hopefully that'll work out. And we also had an update from Jocelyn Minaya from the DA's office about scams involving seniors. Still a lot of issues with elder abuse and increase in Social Security scams, which is, not good. Had some information about talked about some information about the vaccination program at the Armory too. That will be apparently, according to what I've heard, although I haven't seen anything official yet, that is going to be ending there soon. I've also heard since that Yeshiva has opened a vaccination site. So that's a good thing. Our next meeting will be May 6th at 10:30. It's going to be kind of an open meeting. We're going to begin to talk about the capital expense budget. But, I don't have any official presenter yet, so I'm not sure how I'm going to structure that meeting. But we'll have some open discussions, I think, about a few issues going on. Update about probably an update about the noise task force that's going on, which Tanya is the chair of, and I'm a member of that committee. So looking forward to that. And Tanya, I'm going to speak to you later on about that. Okay. Thank you.
Mary, you might want to, and Ebenezer, we forget things when you're aging and when you aged.
I'm sorry?
I said that Ebenezer can help you identify an extremely good speaker and very educated on capital budget matters from MVP's office, who helped through the process.
It's not that kind of discussion we need. We need to figure out our actual budget. We start reviewing what we've asked for in the past. Also already have a couple of items that we want to add, and talk about. So it's nitty gritty stuff.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks.
Yeah,
Mary.
thank you.
As usual. Steve Simon is not in, so we'll give it a little time before he gets in. Ariel is not here yet. So Debbie, you're next. Unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm having a bad night for all of this. I'm going to get straight to TNT will be bringing forward two resolutions this month, so I'm going to get straight to those. first, I think something that probably doesn't need a ton of introduction or explanation is a co-naming resolution with respect to Coogan's Bar and Restaurant. So this would be a co-naming for the corner of 169th and Broadway. There was a lot of support for this. One thing you need to do when you're bringing forward a co-naming, which again, as a reminder, happens twice a year for community boards in April and in October. But one thing that one needs to do is bring like a signed petition of people impacted in the area and showing their support for the idea, and some other, there's a whole application. So when you see the resolution next week, it just goes through sort of history and Coogan's role as an employer, as a leader in the business community, as a supporter of so many local organizations across, a lot of different areas. And of course, the foot race, the 5K, but also there's some stuff in there just about what it meant as a place to come together and sort of like a uniquely, with unique grace, to bring that a lot of different people found themselves there in a really positive way. So that's one of them. The other resolution is kind of a new flavor for us. So over the past, I would say year, but certainly in earnest in 2021, we've heard a lot from people who are talking about how like poor the bike infrastructure is uptown, and particularly as it relates to like getting yourself north and south without completely taking your life in your hands. And so something that came up with respect to something that sort of is impacting Liz's committee as well is the upcoming closure later this year of a section of the Greenway, roughly like north of West 180th, going all the way to Dyckman. So that's all, or I should say north of 181st probably for the closure. And so that's going to be like closed to Dyckman. And that really is the only place, certainly if you have somebody who's a less intrepid cyclist, to get themselves north and south. And so there's been a lot of people saying like, well, what's the plan? Because then how do you get north and south? And particularly if you, And so one community resident came up with this really innovative and kind of elegant solution that wouldn't necessarily cost that much. And so, which would involve the westernmost lane, or the left lane, I should say, of the northbound Henry Hudson Parkway, which isn't really, in that section, it's kind of 3 lanes, but doesn't necessarily need to be 3 lanes. So it would be sort of something like kind of what you have at the Harlem River Drive driveway, where you just have like a bikeway there. And you could do it all with just concrete barriers, so you wouldn't really have to construct anything. Anyway, so it's sort of a neat idea, and it's sort of this idea that could you pilot that, and if it works, could you potentially even bring that up to the Henry Hudson Bridge? Because the other big theme we hear from people about the bad state of things for bikers is any connection Bronx to Manhattan is challenging. So those are my 2 resolutions, or our two resolutions.
Okay, great. I get a lot of heat on the bike structure because of what they were doing in front of the Dyckman projects being today. So they're spreading being spread out.
Actually, let me spend a minute on that. I feel like there's been a lot on Facebook. There's been a lot from some community board members And so I probably should say something about that. City Bike for the remainder of Manhattan is rolling out, or is pretty much rolled out now. I mean, they might have a few more blocks to go. In Inwood, so this was a section of our CB 12 north of 184th Street. And this is the rest of the map for the City Bike network in Manhattan. So I think, like anything, we all look at maps, but then when you see it sort of in person, obviously people are reacting. So there are people who react and say, we still have an insufficient bike infrastructure because there's nowhere safe really to, most of our streets aren't safe to actually have a bike. And then there are people who say, we shouldn't have city bikes up here. So there's certainly both halves. And what we try to do is certainly emphasize to DOT, which we sort of got, that we have more sidewalk stations. They obviously try to have it be sidewalk stations, if at all possible, but they also have to fill a map. Like they're not going to let there be blanks. Like they have to be 3 to 5 minute walk apart, blue, 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 blue. So the proof in the pudding is utilization, but if there are any operational problems, and Ebenezer has had to manage something like this, and I'm managing one that's sort of an issue, like these things are not put in a sort of permanent way. So if there's issues, please come back to Ebenezer and to myself, and we can work with DOT to sort of kind of work through, sometimes something needs to get moved for a variety of reasons. So that's real. On the other hand, sort of a conversation about not wanting them here is not really like something I'm planning to take up on committee. This is something that, the policy in Citibank Bike was committed to, and having a bike network in New York City was committed to a number of years ago. So, but we'll certainly do our best if any of them are just simply not working, or if we see one that's just not being utilized and it's like in a roadbed taking up space, then let's get on that. It's sometimes been challenging to get utilization data, but I'm certainly going to keep trying.
2 questions, Liz, and then Isidro.
On the Henry Hudson Parkway possible bike lane change, I just want to thank you for making as much space for that really important discussion. It was outstanding, and I felt like multiple concerns were addressed. So I appreciated that, and sort of handling the overlap of our 2 committees.
Okay, yes. Isidro?
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Debbie, for the report. So even though we understand that DOT doesn't necessarily require the approval of our community, I think that there should be documented opposition to what they're doing to practically taking away valuable parking spots from the community. Because if it's not documented, then it will never be an issue. So on your report, please note that there is plenty of opposition for City Bike to come uptown. We need to do a study, which I'm sure they will claim that they did, to see who are and where the needs are. If there is a need, fine, but they should come up with numbers to put up all these bikes in Washington Heights and Inwood. I'm not saying that I'm completely against the process, but there has to be a study made to see who's riding the bikes. Otherwise, many parking spots are being taken away from our residents and also from small businesses that truly depend on getting riders on parking meters for 2 or 3 hours so they can do the shopping in the community.
Ozzy?
Okay, so first I want to second Isidro on this, but my point was something else. Debbie, they dug up the newly paved road on 215 and Park Terrace West for 2 days. This road was just paved, I don't know if it was 6 months ago, not even that. And they just dug up part of it to do something related to the school. I don't know if it was natural gas or fiber optic. And they close it like 2 days later. But I would like to ask you to please bring it to DOT why a newly paved road that's supposed to stay paved, once it's repaved, it's supposed to not be open up again for 3 years. Why was that approved? And now this like,
Well, actually, OC, that's not, I mean, Con Ed opens up the street, opens up the street all the time.
Every hour.
It has there's no relation to the schedule. There's that cycle of DOT is one thing. They have potentially DDC, anybody who has a project can go in. There's no scheduling a project on those kind of entities or not, they are mutually exclusive.
all right, so first you're breaking up, but regardless, I think I heard what you were saying. I would like to ask you to please bring it back to DOT and ask why something like that was approved barely 6 months after the road was repaved. So that's a problem. I think that there
Right,
is
but
a rule
I guess what I'm
about the
saying is
3
it
years.
It's not a
doesn't
DOT
approve it.
issue.
Yeah, it's not, like, if Con Ed is going in to do something, it's DOT doesn't get to approve it or deny it. It's a Con Ed thing, like, they need to be notified, but like, do you know what I mean? It doesn't have
Okay.
anything to do with them.
Got it.
It's not their project.
All
Right.
right.
Jim,
But
Jim, and
do
then
you know if it was, do you
If
know
I
if it
could
was DEP or
interrupt,
Con Ed?
Debbie,
Yeah.
you're missing a piece of history.
Yeah.
OC is correct that under normal circumstances, when a street is officially repaved, or resurfaced, the DOT does not want it touched for some number of years. Now, I think, there are situations where that has to be violated. So at the moment, for example, Con Ed is going through a really big gas pipe installation program, and that, just cannot be stopped. So, and then the other thing, I mean, around here, they installed the fiber optic cable and the whole channel they made was this wide, an inch. They ran this thing, they shoved it in and paved it over. I don't know how long it's going to stay there, but so that's another story. But again, so I just wanted to point that again, that normally there is a moratorium when a street is repaved, but again, there are circumstances under which the moratorium is violated because, but whatever.
thank you. And on a different note, Debbie, and I know Cesar is probably gonna pop up and get my attention immediately. I'd like to first thank you for putting and holding DOT to task on the 181st Street busway and the way that it got rolled out and the way that the mayor came in and in the middle of the presentations and the process came in and announced it. And, it became chaotic. And I'm gonna use Liz's words that our power is being that informational traffic. That's our real power. Having us, convey information to the public in this particular situation helped DOT to come back to the drawing board and assure that delivery cab drivers were allowed to come in and drop off and pick up in the street. And I saw in your committee, one of your meetings is when you were precisely, asking those questions. So I'd like to commend you for that. Yes, we do speak through resolutions, but we should also have our actions back up our input, because a lot of these agencies, they like to double talk. They say one thing, but on paper, and then the implementation is entirely different than what they're saying to us. So I'd like to thank you for that, because now I can get a few more customers.
Well, I mean, it's a conversation for another time, but guys, I have to say, there's been a little bit of a vibe sometimes that like, I'm somehow like too agreeable with these agencies, but you have to remember, like something like City Bike, like there are people who want 0 city bikes, and some of you are some of that. And I am trying to reflect the fact that some people just don't want any of it. But there's also people who want it. And there's also strategy and long-term policy as it goes to the environment, et cetera, and how we have too much reliance on cars and this city is being beaten down by congestion. So there's all sorts of issues. And this isn't just me being soft on it, but to say like, oh, well, but I'd also say there are plenty of people who are on their bikes because it makes it easier to run errands and sort of do this thing that people in cars are customers, but nobody on a bike that likes the City Bike Network is ever a customer. I don't really get. So I guess yeah. So I just want to say, like, I am trying to balance the many constituencies, but I prefer not to be treated as somebody who's like, sometimes this stuff is coming back at me like, oh, I'm too much like not questioning. Like, if those bikes are being utilized, you know, that sort of says that they're working. If you have a hypothesis that they are not needed, then that means the bikes are going to sit there and we're going to have full stations. And we need to be on top of that, because I do think that we're not as big bike utilizers, let's say, as the next area. And we have other considerations. I feel like our drivers use their cars to get around. You know, they don't just park them for the week. So, you know, there's always a, you know, you can talk to me about it, but I just, this has been a month where I've gotten like screamed at as being like part of some conspiracy on one side and the other side. You need to, everybody needs to get together.
Yeah, it's part of the game. So I'm gonna have
everybody's
Rosie.
pissed at you, so you must be doing
everybody's
something right.
pissed at me. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rosie, Francisco, and then we're gonna wrap it up. Comments or questions? Which?
Oh, right? it's a quick comment. It's you know, I'm a driver, so obviously I'm gonna always go on the side of parking, but I also like riding bicycles, even though the city bikes are uncomfortable. But I do agree that we need to make the city more green. So to create a balance is, you know, have them in the sidewalks, as you mentioned earlier, that, you know, that's a good midpoint for both sides. And that's just a suggestion on my part. Thank you.
I'm not giving my report.
Thank you.
More than 50% in the most, like 2/3 of the stations, I think, of the north of 184 were sidewalk. Believe you me, they don't want to put them in the street either and listen to us be, you know, and where, you know, and if we think, wow, this one absolutely had a sidewalk alternative and they somehow missed it, then we got to fight for that. And I am doing that in another situation further south, where there's
one on 163 on Edgecombe in Amsterdam.
There's one in my backyard.
That was implemented. The south of 184th has been was implemented a while ago. So, but anyway, but so everybody communicate. Now that it's in the ground, we have to, you know, if we have problems, we need to know about it. Again, Ebenezer he already got one taken care of. He knows how to do it. Just let me know as well.
All right. So Francisco, and then we're gonna move on to our next report.
Hey, Debbie, quick, one comment or two comments, and one comment, one question. I hear a lot of folks complaining that there's not enough bikes in these stations. That's one. Two, yes. I think a lot of folks' issue with City Bike is just the parking situation, right? Because New York City never adds parking; they just take parking. We never get new parking, like you, especially in Washington. I've never heard of a new parking, like a new parking area for cars. Like it never happens, but they take it all the time, whether it's construction or City Bike. And you guys know how bad parking is in the Heights. I mean, it's bad. And they just keep taking and taking and taking. We never get any new ones.
Yeah,
so I think that's where the problem. That's what a lot of folks have issue with.
Debbie, before you answer, let's just get Liz's last word, and then you can just answer all of them at once. Go ahead, Liz. Make a comment.
Can I just point out that if there are never any bikes in the City Bike docks, that means people are using them.
Yeah, but wait.
People are using them.
Yeah, well, yes and no.
But not necessarily from this community.
No, but Francisco's also right. So two quick things. Francisco, you're absolutely right. And I was sort of thinking totally like Liz was thinking and only thinking that until we got presented And then I realized what you were saying, which is true, which is now, remember, it's Lyft who's responsible for restocking the pond, for and what they call rebalancing. There is a sense that Washington Heights is left a little high and dry in that department. I mean, because of our topography, stuff is going downhill. It's not coming back up the hill again, but that's Lyft's responsibility. So DOT was supposed to get some feedback from Lyft about, and I haven't heard anything. So I appreciate the nudge. I've been meaning to follow up and I need to do that. So more on that, but you're both right, I guess is what I'm saying. On the parking, also true, and I'm a street parker. Let me be clear, I am a street parker. So this isn't that. But interestingly, Leo Jimenez, who I haven't sort of formally announced, but is sort of the newest, who is the new assistant chair of traffic and transportation, was talking about recently, he's exploring that question to bring that onto the agenda about, like, remember when we used to have municipal parking areas? Remember how we don't have them anymore? Because, like, for example, we had a Port Authority municipal parking, right? We don't have it anymore. So definitely more on that. But I will say 100% of the curbs were always given to cars. And now some of that, this weensy bit, is being shared. All that free real estate is being shared. And, but at the same time, yes, I would like the parking to work a little bit better. You know, there's also things like, you know, houses of worship get, you know, we give a lot of preferences to people and it all needs to be redone because, like, sort of saying like, oh, people that go in that building can get some parking, but those of us that are just trying to go run errands can't. So there's a lot to be said here. So keep the ideas coming.
All right.
I'm here.
Thank you. So there's a lot happening in our roads from what I see. Boy, David, they have you busy. Francisco.
There really
now
is.
from the roads,
There really is.
business. The road from the.
It's my turn?
Yes, sir.
Okay. April was, the focus was small businesses, PPP loans, and the business of tech as it relates to small business. As well as we had We Love Pop-Ups, which is a pop-up installation company that comes in, and I think I spoke to you guys about this before in our last meeting. They come in and they do Halloween, hay rides, and they also do Christmas. So our people don't have to go to upstate or Long Island to get the pumpkin picking and the apple picking. They're learning the process of finding a location. They're going to be presenting in parks hopefully next month. But they're going to come back to us once they solidify the place and they're ready to hire, so we can be a part of that process, of the hiring process. I got a list, hold on. Okay. Also, Nobles has been trying to contact some folks about some information that we're looking for. We're looking into possibly an app to help our small businesses, relieving them from the Uber Eats fees and stuff like that. So Nobles has been trying to reach out to some folks on the board who can possibly help us direct us to the right people to talk to in the city. Hold on, guys. Jesus Christ. And my 1-year-old, I'm sorry. Okay, so for next month, we have, for next month, we're gonna have Mr. Blair Duncan. He's the president-chief of the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. They have a new loan program that they want to showcase to the small businesses in our community. I really want us to get involved with that because I think it can help a lot of our guys. As you guys know, 14% of our community receive PPP loans. So this would be a nice resource for our small businesses in our community to get involved with. And I just want to say thank you to Mr. Allman. He also sent me a small business resource network. They're doing a partnership with the Hospitality Alliance and creating a new grant, restaurant. Will it? Oh, Jesus, hold on.
Omit yourself, Francisco. You gotta omit.
They're going to have they have a grant and they have a Zoom meeting, so small businesses can take advantage of as well. And that is my report.
Tell your 1-year-old that she's good too. She should have been part of your report too.
That's
There
it.
you go.
Terrorism.
It's called parenting, my brother.
It is.
Curtis is not here, but I want to take a quick second to make us all part of what I think is one of the best days of his life. I don't want to get into personal details, but Curtis is really, really, really happy. So happy that he needs a call from one of you guys. Just text him. He's very happy. I mean, he's happy. Just text him. That's all I have to say. Liz is smiling over there like she knows what I'm talking about. So Curtis, man, he's something, that dude.
I think he announced it in one of the meetings on Zoom.
Did he? So I could say it then? Well, his brother's out after a 10-year sentence yesterday. And he recorded his last telephone call while he was incarcerated. And when he came out, and just, it'll make you cry when you see this reunion and this whole family thing. It's just
I can imagine. That's awesome when you have somebody that comes back home.
Wayne, I gotta take a second here. Wayne, your report.
Okay, thanks. For the April land use meeting, we were scheduled to have 3 presentations. However, one, there was a scheduling snafu on the side of the presenter, and that's going to be redone. And that pertained to the Bakerfield tennis bubble replacement, which was confirmed for the April meeting, but apparently the trustees of Columbia have not yet approved the project, and therefore the presentation had to be rescheduled until they in fact vote on it at their meeting. So that may happen in May or June. Sandra reached out to me for the meeting dates, and I told her that land use always meets the first Wednesday of the month. So she can check our schedule, whichever one is appropriate, then we can reschedule. We had an update from the Department of City Planning on a application that should be coming to the office, Eleazar Ebenezer, this month, and that is on zoning for accessibility. I appreciated the heads up because what has been happening with city planning applications since the end of last year is we were getting them late, and land use was being, pushed to do things at the last minute. So they gave us a presentation that was not detailed. The subject matter expert will come back and give us the information, but this is basically an approach that will require new buildings to allow easements so that the subway entrances can be built into the building as opposed to on the street, and allow for larger, more accessible subway entrances. And in some cases, there will be zoning bonuses that are permitted if in fact the developer builder of a building takes on the responsibility for incorporating a new or an improved subway entrance into the building. So we'll get more detail on that this month. But my point is, to the office, we have not yet received that information, but we are expecting it to come in this month, and we're expecting to have it discussed at the May meeting. So that's one item. The second presentation was from the Economic Development Corporation and a slew of other city agencies, and they provided us with an update on the Inwood rezoning points of agreement. And this is literally the same presentation that was presented to the borough president-led task force about a month ago. And I've asked the office to share that presentation, which I think I forwarded and was previously forwarded by the borough president, with all committees so that they individually can look at the items that are of interest to them, that are under the jurisdiction of their committee, and have more targeted follow-up. Just to be clear, the points of agreement was reduced to writing by the mayor's office in 2018. So we are not negotiating the points of agreement. We're asking the city to let us know what is the status of their progress with moving forward on those. And that was the purpose of the update, to land use. And, some of the projects relate more to TNT, some of them may be parks. But this was a broad overview, but I'm sure the committees would like to look at those and get, more specific information. And as, months go forward to see how they are progressing. There are actually a number of intersections that are supposed to be improved. And I'm sure the TNT will want to know, how they are going to design those and how they're going to get community input on, those designs, because we know there were some issues in the lower heights where the feedback wasn't quite what it should be. And, there were no resolutions passed, from the committee. There was a proposed resolution that was submitted by residents of Inwood asking for the dedication plaque of the Inwood Library to be saved and reincorporated in the new building, and also the 1950s ornamental gates. However, we don't need a resolution for that because we have previously discussed those items going back to 2019, and the public library confirmed it has already requested that the dedication plaque be carefully removed and reincorporated. And my follow-up email to HPD on the matter, they looped in the public library, and yes, both the plaque and the gates are to be, retained and reincorporated in the new building. And per email from Yvonne Stennett, they are looking at, how best to do that. I think the plaque is fairly straightforward. The gates are, they're much larger objects, so they're looking at how and where to place those gates. I also suggested that given the history of the Inwood Library at that site, it might be interesting for the new library to include a permanent or long-term exhibit that really tells the story of the history of the Inwood Library at that site. And that's my report. OC, is that hand for me?
Yes. So the gate, you talk about the folded gates?
Whatever the ornamental gates they refer to.
Okay, so they're gonna try to save it and incorporate it in the new library?
In the new building, not necessarily the library.
Okay, as long as I try to save it, because there was a hole in the side of the wall, and I was so concerned that they're going to just demolish the gate. And
Correct. So it was confirmed that the request pertains specifically to the dedication plaque for the library and the 1950s ornamental gates. And it was confirmed that both are being saved and incorporated into the new building. Now, for example, the pre-K space has an outdoor yard, which I'm assuming has fencing. That might be a logical place to put it, or if they could somehow incorporate it into the facade of the building. It has a lot of glass, but perhaps the gate can be either in front of or behind that, but they're looking at the options.
thank you.
Pas de quoi.
All right. Thank you, Mercy. It was good that they responded to you the way they did it so promptly. So that was good. Faye, next. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Faye, are you with us? Can see Faye? Anybody can see Faye?
Don't see her.
I
She
don't
was
see
here
her.
earlier, but I don't see her now.
Yeah, let's just have Liz, and then until we get Liz.
Okey-doke.
So in parks, we had an extremely long and multifaceted meeting. I encourage you to read the minutes when they come out, which will happen later this week. We did get a presentation from Yvonne regarding the sort of cultural aspects of that development. So that was super useful. And we got an extensive presentation from the Parks Department on the central lawn renovation. And we'll have a presentation, a resolution on that. I have to say, I love it when this happens. We had a couple of people at the beginning of the meeting kind of blowing up the chat, doing the pearl clutching. This is outrageous. And there was supposed to be a presentation and how dare the Parks Department do this terrible thing? And people were really like freaking out. And we calmly replied like, yes, this is an agenda item. We're going to be hearing a presentation at this very meeting. And don't you know, by the end of the meeting, the very same people who were screaming and yelling about how outrageous it was actually wrote in the chat, oh, I responded prematurely. That was really interesting. And this is a very thoughtful, detailed plan. And, you know, thank you so much to the Parks Department for doing a great job. So, you know, sometimes the process actually works. So that was pretty satisfying. There's still some people who, you know, want a dog run and don't like the plan, but everybody who attended the meeting, it was unanimously supportive of it. So look forward to that resolution. We talked a little bit about the whole DCLA and open culture streets thing, which we covered earlier in the district manager's report. I've been involved with the BRC advisory group for Inwood Sacred Sites. That's mostly going to be coming to you through Ariel's committee, obviously, because it's a housing and human services proposed development project. The overlap with Parks and Cultural Affairs is what's happening. You know, how are they going to deal with the whole sacred site aspect of the land itself? So they've had this long series of public listening sessions, and now they've convened a working group and archaeologists. And so there's a series of public meetings, the first of which is tomorrow at 10. So, you know, I'll keep you all informed of that. And then lastly, this is not a Parks and Cultural Affairs item. This speaks to the, does anybody have any questions related to my committee? Yes, OC. Oh, wait, before that, at our next meeting, the main agenda item is going to be checking in with the various enforcement personnel on the many issues that we have seasonally in parks as the weather gets nicer and there are, you know, multiple sometimes competing and conflicting uses, and there's a lot of just heavy use of the parks and lots of issues regarding noise and sanitation. So I'm super grateful to the work, like Mary, I'm grateful to the work that Tanya and the neighborhood task force, noise task force, and the work that they're doing, because all of these agencies, both the police, DEP, parks enforcement, are working on sort of what's their plan, and it gives us a chance to then take a lap through that and just check in to make sure that they've already got a plan in place, not that they're starting to think about it in May. So that's a really good thing. Also, the Parks Department has a trash ambassador program where they're reaching out to the community to get folks to volunteer with handing out trash bags and helping people to, you know, help us help each other to keep the parks well maintained. Obviously, the bulk of the litter removal is happening by Parks Department staff, and they're very good at that early morning cleanup.
But, you know, if there are folks handing out trash bags at the high peak use times, that really has been shown to help keep the parks cleaner. They've got a regular ambassador program and also a junior ambassador program where they're working with schools. I hope I covered everything. OC, what you got? Question mark.
Yeah, I have a question. I would like to ask that you please push the issue of the Columbia University track. It's an open space. They should be open. This whole thing about COVID is getting a
Yep,
little old.
point extremely well taken. Absolutely.
So until you get an answer when they're opening it, please push them as you know how to push.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. I can do that. So, and thank you for the reminder
second.
because I completely forgot about that.
Wayne
And then,
has a question.
yeah. Oh, so sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, so on the church/sacred site, do you know, or do you have any information on whether they intend or think they are going to proceed with the development that is as of right? Or are they looking at any discretionary zoning changes?
Church. So there's no church involved in this. We may be talking about two different things. The sacred sites I'm talking about is BRC. The property is currently a garage parking area mechanic, and they would be building a homeless shelter. They do not actually own the property. They have first right to purchase it, and they're still trying to figure out what would be involved and if they're the people to do it and if they have the funds to do it. And
Yeah, I may have jumped. The emails that have been going back and forth over the last few days with the site where the apartment building was supposed to go up and then it went belly up, and so we're left with what used to be the was it the Jewish Center?
Okay, so
And
that's what I was
that's-
going to report on next. They're
Okay.
completely unrelated. So the things that I was going to report on regarding, which isn't really part of my committee, but Eleazar asked me to report on it, is we received an email from the folks at the Fort Tryon Jewish Center. You will recall, they're at Fort Washington Avenue and 184th Street, right across from Bennett Park. Their building needed a lot of renovations, and there is a vacant lot behind the synagogue at the bend of Overlook Terrace. If you were to take the back entrance to the A train at 184th Street and instead of taking the elevator up, if you walk through the tunnel, as if you were going towards Broadway. So there's a big open lot, which a guy was going to develop. It went belly up. Part of what he was going to do was he had bought the air rights from the synagogue in exchange for promising to make significant renovations to the synagogue. As far as he got before Wall Street tanked and he lost his funding back in 2008, was demolishing the interior of the synagogue. So now the synagogue has been wandering the neighborhood. They're literally wandering Jews, renting worship space from a variety of organizations for the last, 13 years. So they were involved in litigation and with the bank that ultimately took over the developer's property when he went bankrupt. And the bank refused to make good on the developer's commitment to renovate the property. And now the bank has offered to buy the synagogue's building so that the bank can put the lot that it already owns and the lot that the synagogue is on together in one lot. I'm not a bank, but I guess the bank's assumption is they will have an easier time trying to sell it to a developer to develop in some way. The synagogue is tired of being homeless and is about to conclude that deal. So they had two things that they wanted to share with the community board. One is that, this is happening and now that whole property is going to be owned by the Amalgamated Bank. And the second is if we as a board know of anybody who is, looking to partner, like a CBO that's looking to partner up with a synagogue, that they can share space and, mutually figure out something that works for maybe a CBO that has an underused building and is looking for lack of a better term, a roommate. So they're going to be making a short presentation at the general meeting, just like a 4 or 5 minute presentation with 4 or 5 minutes of Q&A, so that they can explain this to the public, because there are lots of people who are walking by that property going, I wonder what's going on with this. To be clear, there is no development that anybody is aware of. And apparently Amalgamated, not surprisingly, is having a very hard time selling the property. So I don't get any sense that we need to engage in like more pearl clutching, that there's going to be a 9,000 story building built as soon as this happens. My guess is it's going to continue to be a fallow, empty lot growing a lovely assortment of wildflowers for, quite some time. I don't see this market supporting, a new real estate development on Manhattan bedrock that's incredibly expensive to excavate.
All righty. You have anything else that you want to share?
Yeah, that really, what you just reported on, Liz, is what I wanted to comment on. And the prior project, there was, I think, a 16 or 18 story, somewhat ugly building. But the point was, it's not a flat site, and the design kind of fought the site. And that's one reason why it was so tall. And one of the things that came out of the study that City College did for us is, if you tweaked zoning a little bit, you were able to get sort of a mid-rise, 6 or 8 story building that covers the lot differently, that doesn't fight the site, and you actually get more, not less, square footage in the development. So that's something where, if we have the ability to put that in the air of Amalgamated or whatever, then, there are ways to work with the site as opposed to against the site. And actually in this market, I will tell you that construction prices are down, so it may not at all be a bad time to undertake a development project, depending on who is doing it. And in my job, we're doing a lot of stuff for CUNY, and where we might normally get, 3 to 7, bids on one of our projects, we got 72 contractors submitting bids. 72.
Okay, good stuff. Before I move on to Faye's a report, does anyone have any inquiries, any questions? If you do, reach out to Liz or Wayne, and offline, they'll be more than happy to talk to you. So Faye, send my regards to Rabbi Guy. Liz, will speak to him. Faye, you had my name a little earlier. Now you have your own.
She's here.
Yeah, I see her. Faye?
Yes, all right. Yes, I'm a little bit lost, but let's see. Yes, well, I guess that it comes to my mind is that I wanted to report that we had 3 presentations, from, and I wanted to say this in particular because in case that some of the members and anyone, listening to us may not have the opportunity to see the video, but there was 3 organizations that they are really interested in getting the word around about their program. So Josephine already, her name is Yolanda Rodriguez, who probably already heard about her because she came to different committee. She's the outreach director for the Josephine Herrick photography program. And she's very interested in getting, our help and get the word out about her program. So we also had Angela Abreu, who is for the first time that she made appearance to the board. She's the founder and director for the Dominican Writers Association. Anyone interested to getting into, the writing fields and other programs that they provide. So she provided, which is going to be on the minutes, her contact information. And we also have from the park someone by the name Anastasia Galkowski. She's the volunteer project in Riverside Park for Washington. And they are looking for especially volunteer student, middle school student interested to work or volunteer for projects that, that they provide. So these are the three presentations that we had. So more to come, or equally important, one of the things that I would like to emphasize besides that report and those presentations is that this upcoming Friday, I think it's this Friday. No, the 22nd. Yes, it's April 22nd. I spoke to Sarah. She's a representative we probably already are familiar with, especially for the Census Bureau. And I approached to her to request information and about like 10 different subjects, which I'm going to send you the list that I sent her because it's many subjects that are interesting to know about the statistical information on it. And then she offered to give us a webinar so to board members, and she specified board members or any guests because there are information that she's going to share with us that have not been public yet. So I put together a flyer and I send it to the office so the office can send it to each board members in hope that you join us for that webinar, because it's going to be interesting to know about, a statistic of whatever, you may feel curious or information that you need to know that you may not have it available right now. So I really highly encourage all of you interested in that particular, type of activity to join us on Friday. So you also may want to invite one guest if you feel like it. So, and again, I wanted just to emphasize on the idea that this is not a public event just because some of the information has not been disclosed yet. But I appreciate if you can join us. And I guess this is my report. And by the way, in regards to the CUNY project, I slightly heard that you touched on it. I'm in limbo with that project, but that's why I cannot ask questions or anything like that. But I'm depending on the chairman, who today had a meeting with them to see exactly how the unfolding of this project. So this is my report, and thank you for the, for the inconvenience of not being present before.
Okay, Faye, before you leave, I think Wayne has a question for you.
Yeah, Faye, quick question.
Yes.
Were you able to get any confirmation from Ebenezer about the resolution that was passed concerning? I mean, it was submitted past the deadline, but do we know if SCA is acknowledging receipt of it nonetheless?
Well, how can I answer this? Well, unfortunately, we know that was submitted late. Since you volunteered to pose the question, but before you asked the question, I asked Ebenezer if he has sent that. But I didn't get a response, an email response from him. So the next day, it was a casualty, actually. It was a coincidence that you asked the question, but I didn't follow up with the school construction authority whether or not there would be what would be the result as submitting this late. So I assume that everything went well, but the bottom line here is that was submitted, we missed the deadline, and that, unfortunately, yes, that happened. So I don't know exactly what we are sending in that.
Eleazar, that's something that we need to get, we need follow up on, because there was absolutely no reason for us to miss the deadline. The resolution was clearly passed at the general meeting, and we had a week to get it in, maybe a little less than a week to get it in by the deadline. And I think it was submitted 3 days after the deadline. And I asked, and Faye asked, whether or not SCA is acknowledging, receipt and going to, pay attention to that. And we need to get an answer to that.
Sure. I think that's for March. I remember a situation that the minutes weren't submitted on time. I'm not.
Well, no, what Ebenezer said that the tally wasn't, submitted,
Exactly.
whatever, but the resolution clearly passed based on, the fact that, a vast majority of the people voted yes to it. So, waiting 3 days after the deadline to get the tally, we put in a lot of work to put the resolution together, and that just doesn't make any sense.
Understood.
I think I did
if
send the
I
tally
may-
from the general meeting. Wayne, I sent it to you personally, and then I sent the tally to the office, and it was the same time that Liz had her resolution. This was all sent out.
Yeah, my point is the excuse that was given that, they didn't have the tally just doesn't make any sense.
To be clear, I don't think the issue is with you, OC.
I just want to make sure
Yeah,
we
yeah,
are all on the
but I
same
don't-
page.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't. Yeah, sorry.
I just, if I may,
Yeah, sure.
I just want to just for the record make clear that yes, Ebenezer told me that because the tally didn't arrive, or he didn't arrive on time, that was the reason why the resolution was delayed.
That's crap. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to speak out of turn and pardon my language, but
The bottom line is we need to find out
we need
if
competent
SCA
office
is going
staff.
to pay attention to the resolution that was passed.
I am going to send an email to the School Construction Authority.
Actually, Eleazar, it should come to the board chair.
Oh, he will? Okay.
Go ahead, Wayne.
My hands are off. All right. So then I'm off. So, all right, I take that back. So.
But once again, I cannot
I
stress enough.
yeah, I'd
to
like
the
to
office
stay.
staff
Liz,
that-
let me stay within the lane here. I don't wanna. I think Wayne already brought up a point. Needs to be addressed. And we need to pile on the same issues that we know.
Yes, because it's an
Yes,
ongoing
we
Ozzy,
actually really do. Because
give
we're
me a second.
volunteers and we
Excuse
work
me.
our butts
Give
off,
me-
and it is not okay when the staff drops the
I
ball.
think that we've thus far have been able to successfully conduct a professional sort of meeting, right? So let's just continue on. All right, so that's that. So Faye, are you finished with your presentation so that I can have Isidro's presentation next?
Yes, I'm finished. I'm finished.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. So Isidro.
Thank
I
you so
have my
much,
hand up.
Thank
Yeah,
you
go
so
ahead.
much, Chair.
No, wait a second. I guess Tanya has a question or a comment to make.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. This is not, I don't think it's piling on. I think one of the things that this is the place as executive committee that we should be bringing these type of concerns. If there's something going on like this that we need to resolve, this is the place to do it. And this is the time to do it when people are here to be able to do that. So I just want to make sure that we are addressing these issues. Like if they come up, that there's a way for us to take the time here to address it. And instead of, saying it will be in some other fashion, I think this is the moment. It's not necessarily piling on. It's not necessarily piling on as it is addressing an issue that is ongoing that needs to be addressed. All of that, of course, I didn't think anybody was being disrespectful. I just think that people were trying to, bring the issue to the fore, and we need to figure out what we can do, what we're going to do about this so that it doesn't continue to happen in the future. So that's just what I wanted to say. I just want to make sure that we are using this space to actually address board processes and issues instead of, not doing that in this space.
Isidro?
Thank you so much, Chair. So as far as the inquiry that was made earlier about the documentations of licensing, I would state that if it's a common practice of all committees of submitting their documentations to all members, like land use, like traffic and transportation, that the practice should be applied to licensing as well. Because of COVID, we are taking some time in making sure that businesses can deliver the documents on time. As of now, we have requested that documentations be sent by the last Friday before a committee meeting. However, if there are issues in submitting documentations, we are extending that until practically some hours before the meeting. So to all this request, if it's a policy and or regulation of the board of all the documents to be sent over to everyone, I will have no problem with that. So now let me go into my report. This week we had a representative from Small Business Solutions introducing some projects and programs to our small businesses. I think that is something that I will continue to do, which is to bring people that will have resources to the committee to make sure that our restaurant industry is well informed and well educated when it comes to getting assistance of COVID and many COVID related issues. For our meetings, we had 15 licenses. 2 of them were withdrawn at the meeting. Out of the new licenses, 2 passed, 1 was rejected, and 1 was withdrawn. You'll get the minutes and you'll see the specifics. We had many rejections, due in part because they did not post the public notice. As you know, the public notice is a document that has to be posted at the establishment so that the residents will come to the licensing committee and express their support and all concerns specific establishments. So you see that a lot of them were rejected. That doesn't mean that they're not getting the licenses back. It means that we are documenting that you have not followed proper CV12 procedures, and it will be listed as such when you see the minutes. I think that will open up the floor for questions. Osi.
So it's not a question, it's in regards to what you said in terms of the documentations. So this is something that was decided, again, about 5 months ago at the executive committee meeting. And the agreement was that the pre-meeting packet that going to the licensing committee, I request them because it's a public information. And Eli said, well, you should not be the only one receiving them. The entire board should. And I was like, okay, but it was sent once and never again. So I'm bringing that almost every month now, again and again and again. We're trying to, this is something that we decide we should do, and we are not doing that. So Isidro has nothing to do with you or against you or anything like that. All I'm saying is that we should hold what we decide we're going to do, and the office need to send it out. It's a public information, and that's all I ask. So far the office did not, other than the first time, did not send it again. So that's my problem. It's nothing to do with you, Isidro, or the committee, or your decisions, or any of this.
Thank you.
All right.
Next.
So Cesar, we'll have to get this thing sorted out in a way in which it doesn't appear as though there's something other than what it is, which is being strictly procedurally adhered to this process, so that things don't fall through the cracks. So thank you, Ozzy, for bringing that up. I have Mariel Ali in representation, Assistant Chair of the Housing Committee. She's going to say a few words on behalf of the committee. Mariel, are you with us? Was she promoted already? She's there. Yep.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope you're all well. I'm just reporting in on behalf of the committee in Ariel's absence. And full disclosure, I myself was not at the meeting, but I did watch the 3.5 hour long video on YouTube and the recording. So I did see what happened. And so at the meeting earlier this month, there was a presentation by BRC. So I know, Wayne, you spoke about that earlier, the proposed shelter, men's shelter that is going up in Inwood. So there was a presentation by BRC, and we also had a representative from DHS just talking about their services and providing more information. There was also a presentation by HPD and the Housing Ambassadors Program and how they use Housing Connect, which is the affordable housing lottery system. Unfortunately, the presenter at the time, she was having some technical issues, so she wasn't able to kind of share like a full presentation. It was a very brief intervention. And so, she did offer to come back to the committee at a later date with more information. Some of the questions that the committee raised were regarding the number of residents in our area that are applying for affordable housing, or the number of, affordable housing buildings or units that often come on the website. So I strongly encourage you all to take a look at the recording. The committee also discussed the Fort Washington Avenue oversight resolution. I know that was that was discussed at the general meeting in March. The meeting, however, the committee did not have quorum, so it's just a discussion and nothing was voted on. It'll be brought back to the committee. The committee will continue discussions next month. Thank you.
Floor is open. Any questions to Mariel? Debbie?
Yeah, thanks, Mariel, for doing the summary this month. I just want to say the Housing Connect thing, I do hope that they can come back and not just sort of with an overview of, it sounds like they had somebody who was very familiar with like the training aspect of it, but one thing that I think would probably be helpful, if you and Ariel agree, is that if they can provide some of that, bring somebody who can speak to the numbers of people in CB12 who are applying for these lotteries. I mean, shamefully, there haven't been units available in a housing lottery in CB12 in really at all in years. Any new development is outside CB12. There might have been like 3 units like last year from something. And maybe Cloud had a couple this year, but that was the first time in many years. Usually you get 40,000 applications for 100 apartments. But I think it would be really good data to understand sort of the makeup of who's applying, so that when we have issues like we did with the Eliza development, where there were concerns from the board that it was weighted towards like 2 small units or whatever, it would be great to see the data. About who's, not just the Housing Ambassador Program, but just in general, the affordable housing lotteries writ large. And then, because we finally will have a building with units in our own district.
Mariel?
Yeah, point well taken. I mean, I will say that was one of the questions that was brought up by some of the committee members. And they did say that they'll take that question away and see what they can share with us in regards to those numbers of people who've applied. I will say I did see, I frequent the website myself, but I did see one unit, I think, for this week. And what they did say is that it's every week that they post new buildings. And it really just depends in terms of buildings have units.
Right. But I'm just saying, in terms of affordable like buildings, like stuff happens all the time in Brooklyn and all the time in the Bronx and sometimes in Harlem. But we literally, if you think about it, there hasn't been a building, right? There was like one, or again, there was I'm not saying there weren't less than 10, but in terms of the city and building thousands and thousands of units, they haven't been here.
Agreed.
So thank you, great job. But I think they're the right questions, and I'm just backing you up that they were the right questions, and because our people are really in need, and I do think it's a problem that we haven't had anything here.
Okay, Deb,
And
thank
because
you,
some people
Mariel.
just want to stay here.
Thank you, Deb, for stepping in a short notice. Thank you very much, Mariel. I have Richard Ullman. Anything to report? And last, Jonathan.
No,
Last month,
Jonathan is not last. There's one more agenda item which we added after that, remember?
As far as presentations, Liz, respectfully, I have 2 more chairs to report, and then we have all business. Look at the agenda, please. Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
same as last month's presentation, putting the task force on pause of dealing with the issues that were discussed last month and overlap our various task forces.
Okay. All right. So, Catherine, in all business, inclusion resolution, take it over before we.
Actually, that was my agenda item, so I don't know why Catherine is speaking for me. So I'm just saying.
Let me just finish my point. Catherine, you have a report to make on Tanya's inclusion resolution point.
Oh yeah. Hey, can everybody hear me okay? Because I got headphones on, new headphones on. But yeah. So I know I sent from last month. I sent one of the proposals, and so I do definitely want to reach out in the next week to talk about some of the facilitator options. So just letting that be known as something that is still pending on my part, at least.
Am I speaking now or?
Yep.
Okay, so there are a couple of things. One is in the resolution itself, there are 2 things that I want to deal with, and I think it's important that we move forward on that immediately. One is the trainings that I think are going to be really key to getting some greater understanding of some of these issues. I attended a board by the NBPO. They had a training on human rights and civil rights issues as it relates to race and ethnicity. And they did a mini version of it, but there is a 3-hour. We had an hour. It was like a lunch kind of thing at 12 noon, but the real presentation is like a 3-hour presentation, and it really goes into some issues, like goes over things like racism, race, power, privilege, those type of things. And I think that it would be prudent for us to take advantage of that training, that 3-hour training with the Human Rights Commission, because they were the ones who actually gave the presentation, and they were willing to actually give a presentation to this board. And on that, it's a workshop, and so it's it's interactive, and I think that we should do that. And I wanted to put that out there because I would like to schedule them to work with the board office to schedule that workshop to begin that work. Additionally, I don't know what Catherine is alluding to in terms of facilitators, but I definitely have myself participated and know many people because that's part of the work that I do, and would definitely like to move forward on some other more intensive trainings, retreats, trainings. As we said in the resolution, one of the resolves was that we were going to commit to regular board retreats at an annual or biannual time period determined by the board, recognizing the reality that board efforts around issues of diversity, inclusion, and collegiality require ongoing work in order to be maintained. And so that's one of the things that I would like to see happen. We can talk about all these things about, the anti-Asian issues and other things and what's happened in Minnesota and things like that and what's happened in our own community. But I think we need to put it into action by moving forward our own resolution. And so I wanted to put out there in terms of what people, I think in terms of time frame, when should we do this? In terms of first with the Human Rights Commission, and 3-hour training, and then a more intensive training that goes deeper, that's facilitated, that goes deeper into these issues of race, power, privilege, oppression, and other types of isms. And so that's what I want to open up on the floor. And then the second thing I want to open up was that I think it's important that I would like to move forward is this idea of really looking into establishing an ethics and grievance committee. The reason being is will serve as a place to hear, review concerns around board processes. Because it's really not a place for people to do that. I have always had a problem with board members sitting outside of this committee, for example, if there are some issues in terms of board processes or things that they may have great ideas. This board is made up of 50 members, not just the members of this committee. And they bring a wealth of experience and knowledge with them. And I would like, and if there are ways to improve our board and what we do, how we do things, if there are issues that need to be brought forth so that we can deal with them, you know, this committee has really not been an open, inclusive place for them to do that. And then all these type of issues end up being brought to the general meeting, which eats up a whole lot of time. And so looking at this possibility of an ethics and grievance committee, which will be a place where people could you know, where these issues can be brought. And it may not even be issues, it could be just ideas of how to make things better, how to improve processes and things like that. And so I want to put on the table about, you know, ways to begin that process, because it said we will investigate the possibility of establishing this. And I would like to begin that investigation of possibility of establishing that, so that we can get more input from all of the board in terms of our processes. And it feels more inclusive than what it is right now, with people outside not able to speak and not able to add any input and things like that, which, you know, kind of always bothers me. I don't like to be a part of processes that are not inclusive of people. So if you know, those are the things that I have on the floor. First, I guess I can open it up in terms of the Human Rights Commission training that they have offered to give to us, and you know, whether what people think about that.
Liz, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I also attended the training, and as did Marielle, and perhaps she wants to jump in. I don't mean to volunteer her. And I found it extremely informative, and I too was, you could see them like advancing past the slide deck that looked that it was like it would be really interesting. And I feel like we suffered a little bit for having what's a 3-hour training condensed down into, you know, 90 minutes. And I think that we all could really benefit from that training. And I would welcome the opportunity for the board to be able to benefit from that.
Catherine and Mario.
Yeah, I was gonna say on the Human Rights Commission training, I think it'd be good to hear. I mean, we're presumably, right, 50 members, will be 50 members officially, in end of the month, May, with the new appointments. So I'm thinking that it'd be good to hear what's like a minimum that the Human Rights Commission, in terms of like participants, and perhaps creating a Google form of sorts that we can have 2 or 3 options tops for, so that can kind of get coordinated with the membership, so we can have like maximum participation.
Yeah, I don't think they have, you know, because I know the call I was on, I think we had like 30 something, maybe almost 40 people. I don't think there's a, you know, they know it's 50 people on the board, so on each board. So they're prepared to offer that. Yeah, so.
Sorry, no, I meant,
is
this is going to be a training that's only specific to CV12 though, right? Not part
that
of
is
the
correct,
citywide
because
program.
yeah, that's because this is we need to fulfill the terms of this resolution that we passed.
Right. So
we
that's why I
can
just said that
practice
way
what we
we
preach.
can, exactly. But it's, so since we're going to ask for like one for us, I think, you know, it'd be a shame to have just 10 people on it. So that's why it's like, if, you know, if they say they can have 1 3-hour one, and this is the ideal, what they're prepping for the 3 hours, so we can have time to coordinate. But I would
Well, here's the thing you can
definitely.
use, Catherine. Here's the thing you can use. We can use. When they said MPPO said on the call that this is going to be participating in certain trainings are going to be required of all in order for people when they to be appointed for all reappointments and for new appointees. So this is not going to be optional. So people doing this will get that out of the way and won't have to worry about that, if they're up next year. So that's one thing is that's happening. So
Mariel, another question.
Yes, more so just a comment. Just to,
Comment.
I learned quite a, I learned quite a bit from the the training.
It's okay.
On these cameras, I can see them. They can hear you. And so, no, I learned quite a bit from the trainings. And I would also say that the presenters were very interactive. I know sometimes when we talk about kind of like these online trainings, people are like, oh, they're very long. And I think they took very important material and shared it in such a way that, again, made it interactive and inclusive. And I would be strongly in support of what Tanya is suggesting. Thanks.
Liz, that's an old hand or a new hand?
That is an old hand. I
Old
am
hand.
so sorry.
Okay, so Catherine and Tanya, you got a lot to talk about offline and get this thing going off the ground. So I hope that by next meeting, we can have something concrete, something that we can start on, something that we can start with. And so we can get the ball going. We can get the thing going.
Oh, and the second item about the Ethics and Grievance Committee, I wanted to get a little bit of feedback on that. Again, the reasoning, and this was a collaborative, just so you know, of board members in terms of this particular part is the need for a space to talk about, to address any kind of processes or things that need to be improved with the board, any issues that come up. So these things are not eating up time in general meeting where that's not really the place for it and things like that, so that we are making space. And we're also letting other voices come into these discussions. So I wanted to know what people feel about what they think would be the best way forward.
Mr. Benjamin and then Debbie.
Just briefly, I understand the concept. I am uncomfortable with the idea of an ethics and grievance. I mean, just the title of it makes it feel more negative than it should be. And so if we're looking at something that is focused on, process improvements or whatever, I think we need to frame it and name it in a way that it doesn't become a self-fulfilling prophecy, that it's all, negative. I think people also need to understand the purpose of various meetings, and the executive committee in many respects is, prepping the committees to be ready for the general meeting, and making sure that, the items of business are lined up to effectively be presented at the general meeting. So the kind of input and discussion around things that may not be related to what are the committees presenting at the general meeting may in fact not be the forum for the executive committee. So if there is another committee that can be created that can allow those ideas to germinate and for those recommendations to come forward, to the exec committee, the way that any other committee brings recommendations, I think that's good. But I think we need to be careful not to frame it in a way that it is, perceived of from the start as being a place for negative energy.
No, and that came up, like that's the whole point, because that came up when we were talking about it. Didn't know what to call it. Like, what do we, and that same thing what you just said, Wayne, was actually the discussion we were having. Like, the title is everything and what it's called. And we can definitely, think about the title and what it's called. And I agree. And I think that, we wanted to, we were trying to figure out how do we contain what could happen in that committee, and whether the title could do that. Yes, it will be a place to bring ideas, but it also could be a place where people, have concerns about some of the processes, and how, and you know what I mean? So how do we phrase that? So, title that in a way that captures all of the things that would happen there.
Debbie, Liz, Jim, and wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm not going to be very articulate on this, but I'm not sold. Like, I don't think we should have an ethics and grievance committee. I think the city charter lays out what a community board does. And lately I'm starting to lose the plot of like some of the things we're getting into. Like there's some, like, I mean, ethics, grievance, to me, that's sort of like there's stuff laid out in the structure, as imperfect as it may be, that exists with the Manhattan Borough President's Office. And there's things that can happen in terms of bringing forward something to the executive committee, and the people have an ability to go. I mean, I guess when we're talking about internal functioning of the board, there's no like place where that's really specified, right? When the city charter talks about community boards, it doesn't talk about what to do when we have these issues, sort of internal issues. But so like the idea of making a committee for it, I just don't like it. I also just don't really understand what the issue is. And it's like, yeah, we have problems. Maybe we can work better, and there's opportunities to work better, but it sort of feels like, I don't know. I'm not an extra committee person. That's just my gig.
All right.
I just want to respond to that since I'm presenting. I think that's the reason I think we need trainings, is so that we can understand the problems that we have, how it impacts us based on our intersectionality and our positioning, our social identities. And so that we can understand greater in terms of why certain things may be a concern and might impact us in different ways. It's just trying to find a space for people to be able to do that on a regular basis. The Manhattan Borough President's Office is more than willing to work with us and help us and give us advice if things come up that we don't quite know how to deal with. But we need a container to be able to deal with these things. And this is just like a container where, to talk about these things, bring these things forth, so people are not feeling like they have to endure things that they shouldn't endure.
All right.
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Tanya, you do not get to respond every time someone talks. You get to respond just like everyone else in turn. And that's how parliamentary procedure works. Now, since I already have the floor, what I'd like to do is comment on what I've been listening to, and I believe what the resolution says. The resolution asks us to explore having a committee. That means we must explore, and I think the way we should do this exploration is a subcommittee should be formed to do the exploration. And this exploration would involve, for example, the issue that Wayne brought up, that, the name doesn't sound too good, and exactly what the committee should do, and how it should be formed, and what its purpose would be. And I think that's what we've been asked to do by the resolution, and I think that's what we should be doing.
Okay. Liz?
I just wanted to echo my support for what Tanya said, and also for Wayne's addition to not loving the name. I think the concept is really solid. We keep on having, it's a little bit like Groundhog's Day. We keep on having these conversations in the executive committee about things that we could do better. And then we say, yeah. But then we don't actually make any changes. So, maybe it's making space for that assessment and, quality assurance management feedback loop in the context of the executive committee, and we don't need an extra committee for it. Or maybe we need something, instead of calling it the grievance and whatever committee, we could call it a personnel committee, where the personnel that we're talking about is not the board staff, but the way that we can be our best selves, the way that we can really have the best training, the best practices, the place that board members can say, hey, you know, I happen to be at a community board meeting in the Bronx, and they had this very interesting way of doing whatever. Maybe we should try that. You know, maybe we should be doing that at the executive committee. Maybe we should have some other way of doing that. And the idea of figuring out how do we work together so that we can work together more effectively feels like an extremely good idea, and the sort of thing that happens in companies all over the country, or at least the well-run ones. So I like the idea of doing it. I don't like the name, but I do think that we should explore figuring out how we do that. And once again, I just want to make sure, as like a
Point of order.
clerical thing, that somebody
Point of order.
puts it on
Point of
the
order.
agenda.
Point of
Okay.
order. Point of order. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we gotta have a time limit. What is the time limit on each speaker?
On comments?
Well, I was just about done until you interrupted me.
Okay, so let's
We don't
finish.
know the time
Go
limit,
ahead,
so
Isidro.
yes.
And then we'll wrap it up. It's 9 o'clock. And I think
I
that
had
we
my hand,
already-
sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought that was that old hand. So Isidro, Catherine, and then that would be it.
So I agree with many of you, particularly Wayne, that the name perhaps should be changed. I also agree 100% with Debbie. I don't think, even though this is to explore, as it was explained by Jim, I don't think that we need to explore, because in essence, what we're creating is a court to decide on judgment issues and on behavioral issues. And I don't think this community board is equipped to do this. We apply to this community board through a process that has been diluted and checked by Gail Brewer's office. And I think that if there are issues, that should be the right office to deal with issues of the board, not a committee or task force that is directed to judge people based on things and actions that perhaps might not be under our jurisdiction.
Thank you, Catherine. That'll be the last comment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that it's stated is obviously open, right? And so the name is the least of it. I think there's the intent, and not so much, and not second, right? Because it could easily turn into like, he says, she says, this is this, and that. But the intent of it came from talking about board member experiences. And there are things that keep people on this board who are on this call for the last 30 years. And there are things that only keep people on this board for the last year or maybe 6 months. And I think that that's important historically for us as a community to have, and as a board to have, that can, I think, pioneer things. Because, you know, part of the reason why I was always saying, I'm like, we need a baseline is because unfortunately, MBPO doesn't necessarily know or publish what brings people to boards, what removes them for the board. So I think it's actually early. I think, you know, again, Tanya, your point, let's start with the trainings. Let's start with the retreats. Let's start with the conversations. And as we're kind of shaping and shaping and identifying and understanding everyone's experiences and resolving issues, then I think we'd be in a much better place to explore what could a committee look like. Because again, my concern to all of the points is like, you know, not everyone is able and willing to do 3 and 4 committees. And so we do need to assess, right, the more subcommittees or bodies and task forces and initiatives that our board takes on, you know, do we have people who are able to participate in it fully, right? And also, like, you know, the reality is, yes, people can take on what they take on, but as a board, we obviously want to have initiatives that are successful, and so that might mean restructuring some stuff. So I think, you know, let's keep it in the pipeline. I think it's early right now, and we can continue on working on the projects that we got.
All right. Sounds good. So,
Can I respond?
It's not a question. So Well, you want to make a last comment? Yes, sure.
Yeah, I would like to make a last comment as as the author of this resolution. I would like to say that yes, I liked a lot of things that came out of it. Yes, the title. Yes, to Jim's talking about possibly doing a sub committee. I like that idea. And I do understand concerns about this, devolving into like, accusation committee. And that's not really, that wasn't the intent of this a particular idea. This idea came from input from your board members who felt that they do not have a voice and that this executive committee is elitist and that we keep people from having a voice, and that they felt that they would like to have a place where they can offer up their ideas, offer up their concerns, so that we can build around that better processes, better ways of being, not only together, but and also ways of doing. And as the resolution said, we passed this resolution. It said we're going to investigate the possibility of establishing this. And that's what we need to, that's what we have to do. And I think that as people are continuing to feel that they don't have a voice, I think that we could at least start the process of looking into, putting a subcommittee together, a subgroup like Jim suggested, and starting this exploratory process. It doesn't mean that we're going to tomorrow, all of a sudden we have this thing. This is going to go through lots of input and lots of, lots of input before anything final is even done. But I do think we need to start this. I think that putting people's, feelings about being excluded aside is not going to be healthy for us as we continue. Even if we're doing training, it's only going to add to animosity. And I have to tell you, we talked to a lot of people on this board for this. It wasn't, just 1-2 people, so there was definitely concern about that. And so I just think that the intent is not to point fingers and start holding trials. That's not what this is. And if anything like that arise, the board president's office would be the people that we would have to take that kind of thing to. We would not be resolving those issues, but it is a place for people to be heard.
Okay, great. Catherine, just make sure that Tanya is abreast of what your interactions with. And Isidro, we have an offline conversation on the procedure. And thank you, guys. I'm gonna call the meeting for an adjournment.
Wait, can I say something before you adjourn?
Yeah, I want to say one more thing as well.
I would like to ask that topic will go not at the end of each executive committee meeting, but at the beginning. Okay?
I agree.
Thank you.
Debbie, is that your old hand or new hand?
No, it's
Old
actually
hand. Francisco?
a new
Wanna
hand,
call-
so why doesn't Francisco go first?
No, go ahead, Debbie. I'll wait. You were first.
I was just gonna say 2 things. One, thank you to Tanya and Catherine and Marielle and Liz and for just presenting that about the training that you experienced and your recommendations. And I do look forward to that. And I just observed, just listening to this, and that I think that inclusion resolution, I think we keep falling in this thing that, Tanya, it's only yours. Like, that's, the board passed it and we all passed it. I do think maybe what you're getting at, or maybe what we're all struggling with, is talking about our internal function. It doesn't have a natural place for the 50 of us. There's not a natural place to discuss it at the general meeting, and there's not really a natural space to discuss it here. And that's valid, and I get that. And I think we struggle with it, and it doesn't, and maybe we do need a time that's not us being in a training where we can talk about all those things. And to your point, Tanya, like, all these people everybody has, you talk to a bunch of people, but we all know 50 of us have a lot of opinions about how we function or how we're heard and all those things. And that if there could be some form to, and I don't know what that is, but it's actually, again, coming back to the charter and meetings and committees and how the board takes action, there's not a natural place for it. So maybe in subsequent times coming back to, moving this up in the agenda or talking about it each month, we can kind of tackle that. Because I don't think we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and we also don't have, again, it's not the business of community boards to have a process to try to work better as a group. And so I think we have to make it, but I don't think, I'm gonna stop.
Francisco?
Yes.
Because I really, Liz, your comment is going to be the last comment before we go for adjournment.
So Isidro, this is going to be the first of many conversations, but when the cannabis thing comes up and we are in it, I would definitely like to collaborate. I think our committees will benefit best if we work on that together. I think cannabis is going to be something that's going to really, it's going to overlap alcohol and that portion that you deal with. So I think as we come together, I think that me and you, or not, well, whoever is running our respective committees, should work on that. That's one. Is there a small business portal where we can send things out to our small businesses in our community? And okay. Lastly is the new member executives and those the new positions and all the shuffling. Is there somewhere where I can see who's part of our board, who's in leadership position and all of that?
Sure. The office will send you one tomorrow.
Francisco, I just shot you an email for an event that we're going to have for Upper Manhattan restaurants. Really important. I sent it to your email, and we do have a database that has all of the smaller businesses in specific areas in Upper Manhattan. So we have a database, and we can share that with you.
Please, thank you so much.
Liz, and then
Two very, very quick things. One is that there are other boards that do have, they call them different things, but I think it's CB7 has what they call like a personnel committee. And it's by personnel, they mean the board members, not the board staff. So different boards in different boroughs call it different things, but there actually are other boards that do have this function. So it wouldn't be at all unusual or new for us to do that. And second, I just sent to everybody on this call an email with the vote tally from the March executive committee, which OC sent out at 8:49 p.m. that evening. So I'm not really sure how much sooner, how much earlier we could possibly have received the vote tally on our resolutions than getting them that night. Like minutes after the meeting ended, OC sent to the two committee chairs, to the district manager, to the other two board staff, and to the board chair, the vote tally. So the assertion that we didn't have it on time is factually incorrect.
All right.
Everybody had it at 8:49 p.m. on March 15th, and there was
you.
no reason for it not to have been sent
right.
along to the SCA.
All right, thank you. Enjoy your night. Call the minute for an adjournment.